Welcome to the Navigating My Crazy podcast. I'm Shayla. Navigating My Crazy is a weekly podcast created for moms trying to balance life, family, purpose, and wanting to improve their mental wellness. Our goal is to inspire conversations necessary to end the stigma associated with mental health and the unrealistic societal expectations related to being a mom. But most importantly, to create a community so that no mom ever feels alone as we all navigate this crazy thing called life together. Let's start this show. All right, so October is a very special month. In addition to my mom and husband's birthday, October is the month that brings awareness to issues like mental illness, breast cancer, SIDS, Down syndrome, and our topic for today, domestic violence. In just the past couple of months, in my city, here in Louisiana, there have been domestic-related deaths that has taken moms away from their children, families, and our community, with the most recent happening just this past Sunday. I posed a question yesterday on the Monday weigh-in asking for advice from moms that have survived their own experiences with domestic abuse to share with other women that are experiencing it right now. The outpouring of advice and support has been tremendous, and the resources that have been offered up have been great. So if anyone is experiencing domestic violence and just wants to talk or wants to have steps to get out of it, feel free to reach out to me via email, DM, inbox, whatever. You can email me at shayla@shaylashaw.com. Ask any questions. I can look up resources for you. I can get you connected with anyone in your local community. There is also a telephone number that I have for the National Domestic Violence Hotline, which is 1-800-799-7233. Also, I did want to highlight some of the organizations. Of course, we have national organizations, local community organizations that offer resources, support, hope, and help to those who are experiencing domestic violence and their families. I did want to highlight one that my daughter is working on and that we are also sponsoring in Lafayette, Louisiana, through her collegiate chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority. They're hosting a walk for change, and it's to bring awareness to domestic violence and its victims. The walk is being held on Saturday, October 19th from 9 a.m. to 11:30. You can sign up for donations or to participate at Eventbrite, and you can just search Eventbrite, A Walk for Change, and you'll be able to find it there. Also, another organization called Made It in Dallas, Texas. It's a nonprofit organization that just recently got up and started. It was created to connect victims of domestic violence to proper channels there in Dallas that are necessary to ensure their safety. Right now, they're hosting a survivors drive, and they're asking for donations of soap, washcloths, toothbrushes, and toothpaste. So if you want to donate or just get more information about the Made It Strong organization, you can email madeitstrong@gmail.com. The episode for today, I do have a special guest that I'm pretty excited to talk with today. It's actually my mom, Diane Varner. She has agreed to join the podcast today and share her own experience with domestic violence. We, as mother and daughter, have just really begun to have real deep heart-to-heart conversations about her own experiences being a mom, mental health and mental wellness, and then her experience with domestic violence. And just really me being able to take a step back and just really see things from her eyes and understand her experiences. And it just humanized of my parents because, you know, we've all gone through things and we all deal with things in different ways. So really just humanizing my own mom and understanding her point of view has been really integral in the relationship that we've begun to build. So thanks for joining the show, Mom.
You're welcome. Glad you had me.
Well, thank you for being In agreement. So, if you don't mind, we're going to jump right into the questions. As you reflect back years and years, when was your first experience, whether it be abuse, mental or physical?
Well, it never started as any verbal abuse, or I can't even say mental, but it was over a little thing. I remember the first time he hit me, and we were not married quite a year. It was over something silly, something small. It was about the TV, what we were watching, or whether to change the channel. I'm not quite sure, but I got my biggest shock when he physically hit me. And that was the first time I remember I left him. When he hit me, I was so in shock. I called my dad and told him to come pick me up right away. And my daddy came, and I had all my clothes. I loaded all my clothes in the car, and I left and went back home.
So, you told your dad that he hit you?
I just told him we had a big argument. And he said, well, you don't leave, for an argument, because I didn't say he hit me. No, I did not tell them that. I just said we had a really big argument. I said we had a fight, but, argument. It was more like an argument, because I was too embarrassed to say he had hit me. And he said, well, you don't leave for your first argument. And I said, well, I want to come home. Please come pick me up. And I was very insistent, and he came all the way up, loaded all my clothes up, and left. And he said, I don't know why we doing this, because you'll be right back. And sure enough, I did. I was right back a couple of days later.
So, what was that process for you, or what was it that he was able to say to convince you to go back home?
Well, that he was sorry. And I felt that he was genuinely sorry for what he had done, and saying he loved me. That was the key word right there. Just saying he loved me and he would never do it again.
And so before that, when you guys were dating, did he ever show signs of like having a bad temper or anything like that?
No, he never did. Never had a temper flare or anything like that. We were just all lovey-dovey at that time. I mean, we just so in love.
Right. And so a couple of days later, you go back home. And about how long from the very first incident to the next time that it happened?
It was years.
Mm-hmm.
Years had gone by. But there were things that happened in those years. Alcohol use became very heavy. Drug use became very heavy. I pretty much think that was a factor in it. And then also his history. His father was abusive.
And so did you know about his father's history before, or did you learn that during that time?
I learned that later on in the marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why he wasn't with his mom and he was not with his father was because of that. She left him because of the domestic violence.
Mm-hmm.
She, left the city and moved to Shreveport with her small son in tow.
Okay. So years pass. He starts to drink heavily. He starts to use drugs. So if you remember, what brought about those changes in him?
Well, sometimes you have a tendency to blame yourself or have being a party to events that happen. Because I can think back on things. I don't know whether it stemmed from me nagging him from never being at home. I felt he just left me at home with the children all the time. He stayed gone a lot with his friends, and then coming home late at night. And I guess I became that nagging wife. I'm here with the kids by myself all the time. You're not here. And I know he worked. He always worked. Mm-hmm. But between working and coming home to us as a family, he didn't do that. When he got off, he felt that his time was with his friends and having a good time, and I guess relaxing, being away from work. He wanted to. That was his form of relaxation, I guess.
Right. So it wasn't until after you guys had kids that he actually started.
And you guys were little. You were small children. I think, he'd start, would come in late at night and he would be, I didn't know whether he was high or he was drunk because at the time I couldn't tell the difference.
Right.
But if I didn't have his food cooked, well, I had his food cooked, but if I didn't heat his food up for him, at that time we didn't have microwaves and you had to heat the food up in the oven.
Right.
So I wait on him, because I really thought I was a good wife. I cooked, I cleaned, I ironed, I ran his bath water. I did all these things to show him that I loved him when he came home from work, that I appreciated what he was doing, and I just loved him. But I think a lot of that was he was influenced too by he used to hang out with older guys. He had friends his age, but when at work, he hung out with some older guys. And I remember specifically when an older guy, I overheard a conversation on the porch, and he had heard me fussing and nagging, so to speak. And I heard him tell him, he said, "Man, you need to put the hammer down on her." And the reason why I can remember this statement, because sometimes when we fight, and I say we fight, but I was too afraid to hit him back at that time. He used that statement, "I need to put the hammer down on you," because the guy felt that I had too much mouth. Mm-hmm. And I may have had. But, being influenced by that, because I knew that guy, person, I knew who he was married to. Her husband used to jump on her and beat her up. Then I found out that he was that guy. When, it was just little reasons like that, my food, I want my food. And I go to bed waiting up on him, and he come in 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and I heated and reheated the food. And I just finally put it away in the refrigerator, and he want me to get up and heat his food up. And I said, "No, I've done that all night long and you never came home. So I went to bed." And he said, "I want you to get up and heat my food up." And by me being half asleep, I didn't realize he was so high or drunk or whatever he was. And he just proceeded to drag me out of bed and to get up and go fix his food. So it was just things like that. And at that time, I was really afraid of him, because when I found out that he was using heavy drugs, I had heard that if you use drugs, you had this extraordinary strength. So that made me afraid of him.
Right.
So I would not do any retaliation or hit him back or anything like that. And I just run from him, run through the house when he hit me, cry, try to keep it away from the children, the kids, or thinking sometime I go in the room with you guys, maybe he won't hit me around you guys, but you would be asleep and he dragged me out of the room and said, "Don't wake up the kid."
Right.
Like you guys wouldn't hear me crying and screaming, whatever.
Right. And so the subsequent times, did you reach out to your family then?
Oh, no way. There was no way that I would have let my family know what I was going through, because I felt ashamed to let them know. I mean, I wanted for people to think that we had a good marriage, a perfect marriage. Then they would see through my facade and say, well, like, "I told you so," because we got married young. I was 18, he was 20. Well, I knew it wasn't going to work. I didn't want to hear, "I told you so." And I was ashamed of it too, of that he hit me. I didn't want anybody to think that he would do that to me. I didn't want to be that person.
Did it progress, or was it him actually hitting you, or did it start at a certain point and then progressed into what I know it to be?
Yeah, it just got worse because I believe it got worse. And again, I attributed it to the drug use. It became really heavy. I don't know. He might have had some inner demons because that was something I did not ask him why. Because after one episode, after he beat me up, he'd always say he was sorry. And then the next time he got high or drunk, he beat me up again. Then he say he was sorry. And I loved him. I truly loved him. So I just kept forgiving him because I believed him. I should have asked him to get some help with his drug use or whatever problem, I don't know why he was hitting me. Because at that time, I was not fighting back. I was too afraid and I didn't want him to hurt me seriously in any sort of way. And he'd always told me that he would never hit me in my face. He didn't want anybody to know he was hitting me. He had a best friend. He used to beat up his wife and he beat her up so bad. And she had bruises all over her face, busted lip, black and blue eyes. Sometimes both her eyes were swollen. And this young girl would go to work looking like that, wearing big shades. But you could see the bruises on her face. And he told me, I'll never hit you in your face like that. And I should have thought, okay, he didn't ever say he would never hit me.
Right.
He just said he would never hit me in my face. So my physical blows were on my body, something that I could cover up.
So did you rationalize that and made it better? Like, what's the thought process for you after this happens and you see the bruises?
The thought processes was, he doesn't love me. He can't love me and hit me because I had a past history of being hit. So I just, in my mind, I always thought if a person hit me or beat me up like that, how can he love me? But I felt that if I loved him enough and he saw how much I loved him, that eventually he would stop. I thought he would stop, but it didn't. I don't know if you remember, you was a baby, so you probably did not remember. I would leave. There were times I've left him so many times. I always come back.
I remember, I think my earliest memory was actually of you guys fighting. I know we lived in Shreveport, and I remember him putting you through a television. That was one of my earliest memories. And I knew I had to be, at least 3 or 4. And then another memory was of us running from the house. And we were like in a tree, or you told us to get in a tree or something like that. We were running from the house. I remember that too, because I always used to think of Dad as a vampire. He would always be really nice in the daytime. And then at night, he would be like this evil. He would turn into something evil. So I always, until I was like at least a teenager, I always thought of him as a vampire because he just had these 2 distinct personalities in the daytime and at night.
Yes.
Seems that you guys had a lot of associates that had domestic violence going on. You talked about his dad. Did you see domestic violence in your family?
Never. I never saw that. And that's why I just could not fathom that. My daddy never hit my mom. And if it went on, I never saw it. I can say that. I never heard. So no, I never had any memory of my daddy ever hitting my mom.
So what about in your circle of friends, or did you ever talk about the things that happened at home?
No, I never told anybody. I didn't tell anyone he hit me until after we broke up. And I remember the first time I told my family, revealed to everybody that he used to jump on me. I was too embarrassed. I mean, that's not something you told anybody. I didn't tell my close circle of friends. And even though we whispered about the young lady that would get beat up because she was in our circle of friends, but we would tell her personally, leave, go, but never told anybody and never thought about it applying to me. I just put myself out of the equation. I used to feel so sorry for her that she would go through that, and then for him not to love her, for him to beat her up like he did. How can a person love you and do that to you?
He would apologize. So was that always the pattern, or was it to a point where that stopped?
He always apologized. Every time he did it, he always apologized. He'd come to my mother's house. He's crying and would not believe how remorseful he was. And I remember my mom asking him one time, why do you keep doing the same thing? If you know she's going to leave, why do you keep doing that? And he just said he was sorry. He'd cry and I couldn't stand to see him cry. And I should have known those crocodile tears.
Do you think they were crocodile tears, or do you think that there was truly remorse, but he just didn't know how to control himself?
Well, the reason why I say they were crocodile tears, not that he was faking crying, but I just remember reading something, some old adage or old story, beware of a crocodile, because you see the water coming from his eyes. They're not really tears. They're just water, you know, and if you get close to them, they're going to snap you up. But I felt that he was remorseful, but every time I went there, I always got snapped up. You know, I got it. The same thing happened over again. It just be a matter of years. Sometimes when I go back to him, maybe 2 years will go by and there would be no more abuse. But I do know one time when there was when the verbal abuse did come, and it's not called, he never called me any nasty names, but no, I'd say not the verbal abuse. What do you call it? When they just, they mess with your mind mentally and tell you nobody else wants you with all those kids. And I believed him. He told me that so much. He said, where you going? Who's going to want you with all these children? So I just felt like I was unwanted by anybody else but him. So I kept coming back for that fact, and then also for the main fact that I loved him. I just had to keep going on that because I wanted that fairy tale marriage. I wanted to be like my mother and my father. You know, even though they had whatever problems they had, I never saw any physical abuse, but I wanted to be married a long time like they did. I wanted to be married forever. That's what I wanted. And I thought that, and then even talking to some older women, I listened to them, you know, they see me going back and forth, you know, I'd leave and they just say, well, sometimes you just have to put up with some things and eventually, you know, he'll come around someday. I went on that hope, hoping that he would do that. But that physical abuse really started chipping away at me mentally. And I became depressed. And one time I became so depressed that I felt that I had a failed marriage and I couldn't get out of bed. I just would not, I refused to get out of bed at one point. I just wanted to lay there and just go to sleep and not wake up again. But what made me get out of that was I kept looking at my little children. I had my little children. I had to hear you guys were little bitty and y'all looking at me like, what's wrong with you? So I knew I had to get up because of my children. But I was in a state of depression and I just was going through motions. I was just like a robot, just doing things automatically.
It was good that you brought up that point because, of course, experiencing violence from someone that you love wears and tears mentally. Were there self-esteem issues? Do you feel like you had those issues coming into the relationship, which would make you stay in a situation? Victim blaming and victim shaming, and that is by no means what I'm doing. That manipulation that happens to make a person feel like they should stay in a situation or with someone that supposedly loves them but is hurting them. So
that makes plenty of sense because I was a person with very low self-esteem. I used to think I was the ugliest thing on the planet at one point in my life. And all because of your dad paying attention to me, looking at me. It seemed like he didn't want anything from me, but he just wanted me for me, who I was. Because like I said, I thought I was ugly. So yes, I did have self-esteem issues. So when he paid attention to me and looked at me and saw me, and I just fell head over heels in love with him. I could talk to him and open up to him and tell him everything. And a lot of the things that I told him, he later eventually used those deep seated secrets on me. He turned them against me, so to speak. And he played on that low self-esteem thing. Yes, he did. But just saying nobody else wanted me, that really affected me more than anything else. Just thinking nobody else wants me but him. So who could I go to? Where could I go? Then at one point, I turned to God. I thought that that was the answer. But because it became the answer for me, I should say that it helped me in a lot of my ways. And I was thinking that if he turned to God, maybe that would be the answer for him. And at one point he did. And he did so well. And I mean, it would seem like we were in bliss for a short period of time. But he went back to his old habits. But I found my empowerment when I started fighting back. He didn't fight me as often. When I stood up for myself, it was really not for me because I took the beatings. And because in a way I felt like I did something that I deserved it. Maybe I wasn't being the good wife that I thought I was being. But it's when violence looked like it would turn toward my children. That's when I stood up and I found my inner courage. And I said, I will be this mama bear. If you touch my child, you can beat me up all you want to, but don't touch my child. And that's when the tables turn. And then I start breaking up everything in the house over him. So anytime he hit me, I pick up an ashtray or whatever. But it was just living in craziness at the time, young and dumb. Then when he saw I fought back, he would leave me alone for a few years. That lasts a little while. Then he'd come back doing the same thing. And it was just, and that's what you guys grew up into. You grew up into that crazy situation, and which I should have left. I've left so many times. I left him so many times, and I should have stayed gone. That's what I keep saying. I should have stayed gone, and that would have ended that horrible cycle that we were living in.
So reflections, thinking back, and as far as we children were concerned, what do you think the effects, or what effects did you see domestic violence had on your children?
It affected you guys in so many ways that at the time I couldn't see the forest for the trees. I was so steeped in our relationship that I lost the relationship with my children, with you guys. I lost that relationship. Even though we would I would do surface things, but emotionally, I was not there for you guys, and I regret that so much. You know, I started going back into how I was treated as a child. I reverted back to that, and something I said I would never do to my own children. It just, by staying in that, it just had such a snowball effect on everything. And I see, how you became introverted, and your brother became introverted, and your sister became extroverted, and it was just such an ugly cycle. And I would never ever tell a woman to stay in a situation like that, because on reflection, if I could take it back, and if I could have just left and stayed gone, I think you guys would have not had the issues. You would not have experienced the things that you've had. So I carry the heavy weight of guilt on me, and until the day I die, I'll have that guilt that I stayed there, and to the detriment of my children.
You actually said something quite interesting as far as your emotions, because you have to, in order to experience that kind of abuse from someone that you love, you have to kind of like turn a switch in your mind emotionally and physically. And that's not a switch that you can turn on and off, even when you're dealing with your kids. So when you said that, it makes sense, of course, to me as an adult, that you're not a robot. You can't just, be super mom and loving mom and then have to experience that kind of abuse, because it's a switch that you have to turn off emotionally to be able to stay in that situation.
Yes, and it's like almost like you're on autopilot, that you just go through your life on autopilot. The people from the outside, all they see is just you being this good mom and good wife. But it was tearing me up inside. It was breaking me down. And I just felt like I was just crumbling. And so I couldn't be that good mother for you guys because I was not a good person. I had not addressed what was going on with me, how that was making me feel, and still trying to have that outward show of being this good wife to him. And then always wondering, what's wrong with me? Something's wrong with me. I can't have a good relationship. I can't get him to love me. I'm not lovable. Since I wasn't getting the love from him, I was relishing the love that I got from you guys. I loved it when you were smaller. But when you became independent people, I tried to hold on to you from the strict religious background I was trying to instill in you guys. I wanted you to stay close to me, whether you believed it or not, because I loved you, and I, love you so much, because I knew you loved me because I was your mother. I just knew it was just a automatic love, that you were going to love me regardless. But then how devastating it was to find out, because of me being on automatic pilot, that I wasn't seeing you each as an individual, how this was affecting you guys. And you said something to me, and I should have listened to you as a teenager. One time he was gone, and I had one of those times when I fighting, and he ended up out of the house. And he was trying to get back into the home as cycle went. And you came into my room. I don't know if you remember that. You came into my bedroom and sat on the bed, and you said, Mama, don't take him back. You said, I love Daddy and I love you, but you're not happy when he's here. You don't smile when he's here, and don't take him back. I should have listened to that more. I should have listened to find out why you were saying that. And I went to your dad and I told him that. And not like, well, Shayla told me not to take you back. But I went more like, for some reason, Shayla don't want you back in the house. She said, I'm not happy. But I was listening also to other people. Get your husband back. You're supposed to be with your husband. The children got to have a father. And I was even getting this from my parents, that you didn't grow up in a single household. You had a mother and a father. Why deprive your children of that? And I wanted to say, do you know the chaos that's going on in this house?
Right.
But I didn't let anybody know what was really deep-seated issues in our home. I just let them just know and see the surface things. And I should have. And that's something I just play over in my head. I remember those words, just like it was yesterday, because I should have listened to you. And then you guys at that time, by being teenagers, involved in your mother and your father's issues, that drew you into that, which I never wanted you guys drawn into. But staying in that situation, it would do that. It's crazy to say you don't want something to happen, but then you're putting all the pieces together for it to happen by staying in
Was
there.
there ever a time that you felt that he would end your life? Or did you feel like it would never get that far?
I did. And that was, I think maybe was the last time. I had no idea that he would have done that, but it wasn't until the last really bad physical altercation that we had gotten into that he broke the coffee table in the living room, and just by hitting it. And now here came this old fear again, that someone who's on drugs, they have this superpower. And this was an all wood table. He broke it in pieces, and this big piece chunk came off. And we were arguing, fussing, fighting. You guys were into the mix. And I turned around, and I turned back around. Your brother had your dad's hand, or he got the piece of wood. It was a big piece of wood that came off the table, and your dad was about to hit me with it. And I realized that this man would have killed me if he had hit me with that. Other times earlier, I thought about it. The first time it started happening, when he would drag me out of bed and he would beat me up, and I get kicked in the stomach or whatever. I was just thinking, okay, he could kill me. And that's why I would leave, taking you guys, sneaking out of the house, taking you guys out. He could have killed me. And how that could have affected you guys would have been so devastating. And all I can say now is I'm just so sorry that I stayed. I should not have stayed. And that's the advice I would give. You need to know your mate. You need to find out your mate's history. Find out about his mother and father. Find out if he's angry, why he's angry. Insist on him getting help. For you to give help also to find out why are you tolerating things like that. Don't ignore those things. I mean, those are signs sometimes you can't see because you're right in the middle of what's going on. Just listen and just look at the signs, because staying there affects everyone.
Because in most cases, you think you're hiding it from the kids when the reality of it is you're not. That's great advice. Really, really great advice. So what was it about the last time that made you decide, no, he's not coming back?
It's just years, over 20 years of the same cycle, and it's not ending. And you're trying to follow the advice that you're getting from your parents. You follow the advice you're getting from spiritual people. You're following the advice from everybody else except what's going on within you. And I can say I was able to walk away. A lot of women, some people didn't walk away because somebody took that opportunity away from them by taking their life.
Well, that was such great advice, and thank you so much for sharing. I know that was extremely hard. This will help so many other women. It helped me even more so. Oh, I appreciate you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Navigating My Crazy podcast. Don't forget to send all of your questions to questionswithans@navigatingmycrazy.com, or you can complete the form on our website at navigatingmycrazy.com/contact. Also, join the community and chime in on the conversations by liking and following Navigating My Crazy on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Subscribe and rate us 5 stars on iTunes or your favorite podcasting platform. Moms, have a great week and get ready for our next Talk It Out Tuesday.